My responsibility is always to run into people and bring out the best of themselves, that what God created them to be, that's what they should strive for. That's their ITHAKA. And that gives me purpose.
Welcome back to ITHAKA, the Journey of Great Hellenes, a speaker series powered by the Hellenic Initiative. We explore journeys, values, and legacies of distinguished Hellenes and Philhellenes whose lives have shaped our communities and institutions. Today's conversation features Father Alexander Karloutsos, a highly respected spiritual leader and one of the most influential figures in the global Orthodox Christian and Hellenic communities. In addition to his over 55 years of devout service as a Greek Orthodox priest, he has been a trusted advisor to presidents, prime ministers, and ecumenical patriarchs, and has personally raised over $500 million for Orthodoxy and Hellenism. In 2022, he received the United States' highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom from the President of the United States. And in 2025, he became the world's highest-ranking married Orthodox priest when he was elevated by the Ecumenical Patriarch to Grand Protopresbyter. Please welcome THI Executive Board member and the man known to hundreds of thousands around the world as simply Father Alex, Father Alexander Karloutsos.
So welcome everyone to another of our series, and this is certainly for me and all of us a very, very special edition of our ITHAKA series for the Hellenic Initiative. It's very special for me personally because to me, Father Alex wears many hats. Father Alex is truly my spiritual leader. Father Alex is the inspiration for our community and its tie to Hellenism and creating a modern context for Orthodoxy. And Father Alex is a dear old friend. So Father Alex, this conversation about your ITHAKA makes me feel it could have been 2,500 years ago in the Agora. Two old friends sitting and contemplating life. It could have been 50 years ago, sitting in a cafeteria in my Sparti. We'll talk about your roots. It could have been when we started THI and what you meant to that and still mean. And just as much as today, two old friends sitting together. So I look at you like my spiritual leader, as so many millions do, frankly, around the world. But for me, it's very special because I can spend time, the warmth of this feeling is very special for me. So welcome, Father.
Well, I've got to tell you, George, you touch me deeply. And, you know, I have my love and respect for you and Georgia and the kids. I was honored to do the weddings of your children.
Indeed.
But when you talked about the Agora, it brought me back. We were with Socrates, and he pointed out that the unexamined life is not worth living. And we just lost a friend, Ernie Anastas, and he had given this advice to young people. Don't try to live a life of success. Try to live a life of significance, the examined life. And one thing that as we move now to where we are today around this table, it's about the significant life, the meaning of life, the examined life. And that's what I believe the message of the Hellenic Initiative is so powerful. Because with all the success and all the wealth and all the artificial intelligence, which at the end of the day is artificial, that what we need to do is to have intelligence of heart, mind, soul, and body, as our Lord proclaimed that as we're going towards Easter, the resurrection, the crucifixion, the highs and the lows of human relationships. One day you're welcomed on Palm Sunday, then you're crucified on Friday. Everybody runs away, you resurrect. So those are the stories of the Greek community in America too. We were very blessed because we had one of the Greeks as the founding fathers. He was not a Hellene, but he was a Philhellene. The four founding fathers, what were they? Romans, 3 of them. Washington, Adams, and Madison. The Greek was Thomas Jefferson. And it is because of his concept of democracy and based upon the Constitution of the United States, grounded in Hellenic thought of the exam in life, how many years ago, that we can sit around this table and celebrate our ITHAKAs, our journeys.
Father, I would think that I echo the views of many, many people to express that undoubtedly you were there with the founding fathers of America at that time and guiding them along the way. But let's start even before that. Let's start with who is Father Alex and where did it begin? And prior to your priesthood, your boyhood, where were you? What is it? And how did some of those things begin to shape you?
Well, Father Alex was born in a village, Lazoi, Pyrgos, Greece. I wasn't born in Sparta. I wasn't born in Corfu, where my wife was from, but I was from a nice little village. We had our roots in Asia Minor. We grew up in the United States. My dad was a priest, a very good priest, humble priest, but he was moved around across the country. So if I told you the places, Springfield, Massachusetts, New York, Detroit, Michigan, Bayard, Nebraska, Charleston, West Virginia, Middletown, Ohio, Concord, New Hampshire, Jamestown, New York, Sioux City, Iowa.
So his journey, that was his journey.
Yeah, it was his journey, but it was also a journey that was very painful for a young boy who had just lost his mother. We're a family of 6, and my mother died when she was 35. My brother Nick, who was the oldest, had a nervous breakdown, 16. And my brother Nick suffered a great deal. He was always a dishwasher and a janitor. And I have to say, I wouldn't be a priest today without my brother Nick, because he sold, he took $1,800 out of his bank account to give us the opportunity to go to seminary. And at that time, it was $900 a year for tuition. So my brother Jimmy and I went to seminary together.
So why the seminary? Did you, from a very early age, think you wanted to be a priest?
I always loved the church to a certain extent, even though my dad kicked me out of church a couple of times. When you're in the altar, you do a lot of crazy stuff. They say, Papa pedi diavolo angoni, son of the priest, grandson of the devil. Well, it was tough when you don't have a mom. And so we created a lot of problems for my father. But for me, we talk about the exam in life. But when you lose your mother, the question is why? I was never caught up in how much. I was always wanted to know the reason why. And that brought me to the priesthood, because I have to have purpose in my life. And it's an ITHAKA, it's a destination. So the destination for me became the kingdom of God. And that's why Hellenism and Orthodoxy come very easy to me, because it is the destination that gives us the purpose. Once you know where you're going, you navigate, and you got to have the skill set to go there. So growing up in this country, I saw the diaspora. I saw what it was like being in New York, and I saw what it was like in being in Bayard, Nebraska. Very few people ever had that. But I also went to West Virginia, Middletown, Ohio. All of those experiences helped make me probably somewhat of an empath and understanding what I needed to do in relationship to my church or community.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of church and religion, orthodoxy, and how is orthodoxy, do you think, relatively unique compared to other religions? How does the orthodoxy and its roots still be relevant enough and have meaning enough today? How do you keep it fresh and alive.
Well, again, orthodoxy means true worship. Truth does not change. People, perception of truth may change, but truth does not change. God, the creator of all things visible and invisible, is what gives us meaning and purpose. So orthodoxy never says who God is in reality. Even the word God is a concept and an idol. We are taught, but we don't know it theologically, sadly, that we cannot fully understand God beyond our comprehension. So orthodoxy is complemented by an orthopraxy, the practice of orthodoxy, which means I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was homeless and you gave me a home. I was in prison and you visited me. So what happens in life, no matter where we are, we want truth. We want meaning and purpose. But it's manifested through love, faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these three is love. So we need to be more out there serving and loving. That bears witness to the truth. And the truth is what makes you free.
Does Hellenism have a relevance there? Does it complement Orthodoxy? Does it make it stronger? Does it contradict it? How do the two interact? And again, they interacted 2,000 years ago. Do they still interact? And how does that work?
They still interact, and you see the dynamic between the free thought. In other words, we're not as dogmatic as you would find in Catholicism, for example. We're not get caught up in sin as weighing you down, and you're in the hands of an angry God, as it is in Protestantism, or you're going to hell because you haven't met Jesus that way. The church is a church of love, and so it embraces. Hellenism, in its true thinking and thought process, always entertains the question. There is always the cynic in us. We don't know all the answers. The only one that knows the answers is the one that never dies, right? We're all dying. That means if we're dying, so is our knowledge finite. We're finite. So we go to the resurrected one who affirms the truth of life, and that is our Lord Jesus. So you use basic Greek philosophical systems to explain who the Jewish Messiah is and became the Messiah of the world. There would not be Western civilization unless it was a marriage between Greek thought and Hebraic salvation history.
Now, Greek Hellenism, Greek thought, but also Greek culture.
Yeah.
So for so many of us and our ancestors who came to these wonderful shores, whether it was 150 years ago or 50 years ago, they found solace and comfort as diaspora Greeks in the church. And you, from the very beginning, ever since you and I got to know each other 40 years ago, you were, it seems, taking advantage of the Greek culture to bring and preserve for that Greek culture, advancing the church, and therefore making them both relevant, almost unique among other societies.
No, it's a very good point, because what was a natural connection was our Hellenism, right?
Right. So Father Alex becomes a young priest.
Yeah.
And his flock, his emerging flock is what? Where were you at that time?
I became a young priest. I was ordained by Archbishop Eugenius of Crete in Washington, D.C., St. Constantine and Helen. And Archbishop Iakovos ordained me 5 days later, a priest, at our seminary. When I was ordained at our seminary, the faculty did not allow the student body to come, because I was kind of a rebel, kind of a young priest. And they
why does that surprise? Why does that surprise anybody who's listening into this?
I mean, it seems to me you get a priest getting ordained from your seminary. Everybody should have been there, right? No, I was a threat at that time, I guess, and so.
Oh boy!
And then I said, and then they sent me to Chicago, to one of the greatest mentors, spiritual fathers, Father Byron, and it was a blessing being with Father Byron because he was a deep believer. He grounded my faith. In other words, I became like one of those big oak trees. All the roots were down there, and Byron strengthened that. And my wife had presbytera Cynthia Xanthipi Nicolau. My wife's name is Xanthipi. Her name is Xanthipi. And it was followed by Father Dean Palaiologos. His wife was Xanthipi. The only three Xanthipis all ended up with Byron. But that really strengthened my wife and me for 4 years. But at that time, I was young. I had longer hair. I could shoot pool and play basketball like with everybody. They made me the director of youth ministry. And I created the best youth program in America. And then in 1974, Archbishop Iakovos was looking for a youth director. And he asked me at a funeral, actually, it says, I want you to come to New York and be the director of youth ministry. My wife had just given birth to our daughter, Anastasia. And so here was an outside looking, my dad was always on the outside. Then I became the priest on the inside. But when I was on the inside, I was always thinking of those priests who were on the outside. So there's always a tension with me. I love the Archdiocese, not necessarily happy with what the Archdiocese does or doesn't do, and I found myself in conflict over the years with the Archdiocese because of it. But I am a dutiful servant of the Church, so I try to serve as faithfully and as honestly as I can to the Church and to the Orthodox faith.
And the key to the Greek diaspora here and in many other countries. What was the DNA inside of you that sort of felt this mission to bring those who were outside of the church in this? And what do you think I think your attraction is.
Yeah.
Selfless, magnetic, preaching the way, which has a modern feel to it. But on that journey, what do you think motivated you to be inspiring and want to reach out and found leadership and 100 and all these other organizations? I mean, do you think that you trace that back to almost an insecurity in your youth, losing your mom? I mean, what do you think it was?
I believe to a certain extent, losing my mom. I do, like I said about why. Well, love became the word in my life. It was not only a noun, but it became a verb. It became an action. And as I was looking at my dad's ministry and the ministries within the church, I'd always hear priests coming up with the excuses, we don't have the right money, we don't have the right this.
Mm-hmm.
As I was getting exposed, which I wasn't aware of, how great our community is. And I'm looking up different people's names and who they were and what they were doing.
Sort of coming of age at the same time.
Yeah, and all of a sudden
we were coming of age.
Really, and all of a sudden, look at these personalities. I go, my God, if we could take the talent of these people and connect them to the church, how much more powerful will the church be in its message? We could empower and we could do the great things. And this is what started developing in my mind. I never realized that I had this gift of connection. It was a bizarre way it developed. I did it with young people.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say I was really a very good preacher with young people, and we'd laugh, and I'd get stories to this day when I go back to Chicago. But then when I came here, I'll tell you a story. I've not seen this doctor, but I had to reach out because there's a child that's very sick in Greece. All of the intestines, everything was messed up with this guy. The kid's 17 years old now and needs to get surgery. I reach out to Costa Sideridis out in Boston. Now, why am I getting to this? I reach out to him, and he connects me to a doctor, and the doctor writes me a note. His name is Peter. Father Alex, I remember you when you were a young priest and you were at St. Nicholas, and you talked about Philotimo. This guy's the head of pediatric trauma at Harvard. And he's talking about a young priest. That was where the community was. He didn't say you talked to me about Christ. He said you talked to me about Philotimo, but it was in the context of Christ and the church. So that was Hellenism at its greatest, and the voice and the embrace was the mother church. So for some reason, God put me in a place where I could talk about Hellenism with its exciting, dynamic ideas of the examined life, know thyself, ITHAKAs, all of these images, but in relationship to the gospel. And in my life, they've meant everything to me. So I had this kind of gift, and then Iakovos said to me, go from youth, and would you help me with the White House and the politics? And then again, Leadership 100 was a failed program, and he said, we'd like you to take over Leadership 100. And I said, what is that? And we did that. And that's when you and I met early on. Of course, we knew each other from Washington. But I remember we were at Periali, when Periali, Kostas Piliadis, who did Milos, and then everybody else rips off Milos. But I said, why did you come to New York? He says, I came to New York because Periali succeeded. He says, so I realized I could do Milos. But we were at Periali, and I was trying to work on this guy to join leadership. And you said to me, I don't think it's going to work. I said, well, I think it'll work down the line. But I also was working on you at the time.
You were.
And I was working on you, and I'm so proud.
Well, why? And I'm one of thousands, frankly, but you made it feel so personal to me, how meaningful you made it for me, looking at me, dealing with me, that gift of personalizing it and bringing me that confidence and warmth to get it to
But
get
you
involved.
got to realize your mom and dad, right? They gave you to the church. You were brought into the church as a baby. You were received by a priest. It was a Greek Orthodox world. So when those things and memories and whatever your parents gave you, they also gave them to other Greek Orthodox people too. But the world, takes you on other paths. So my responsibility was, let's get back to ITHAKA. What are we really doing? What did your parents really give you? Yeah, the money is fine, and the success is fine, but at the end of the day, it's artificial compared to your own intelligence and your own heart and your own soul. Don't get caught up in that. You get caught up in that, you lose. And as it goes in the poem, don't let the Poseidon or don't let Cyclops or Lastrygonians go into your soul. My responsibility is to talk to somebody like you.
You sound just like Sean Connery.
I've been working on it.
You've got the voice.
But that's the point. Don't let it get into your soul. So that's what my responsibility.
Right.
And in regards to orthodoxy, that's called salvation.
So after Leadership 100 and faith and National Hellenic Society, etc., Greece itself, our cousins back there, find themselves 15 years ago in the most desperate time in living memory for Greece and the people of Greece, our cousins.
It was an existential moment.
So we, the lucky ones, found our way here on these shores and began to feel a sense of responsibility back to Greece, and because we came of age. And so your influence on THI, and I want to bring this full circle, not only, frankly, inspired me and others to start it and move it to where it's been, but you always focused on the youth. You always reminded me that next generation, that in an even more confusing world of AI, et cetera, it kind of needs its way, and have the youth. Sounds to me like that kind of started even with your mission in Chicago, where you were started with. It's always been your mission. In this confusing world today, where the internet serves a positive role, but also a very negative one for our youth, how do you see us reaching? I mean, you and I always talk about a rising tide lifts all boats. I think that you're using Hellenism, their background, not necessarily just the church, but making the whole person, is how you seem to be attracting the youth. What challenges do you see today in getting to youth and infusing in them orthodoxy, or at least some form of organized religion?
Well, to go back into when THI, I found that you used the word lucky being here. I find certain people that understand luck as blessedness. You feel blessed, and you feel a real presence of God in your life. Maybe you don't wake up every day and say, thank you, Jesus. But at the end of the day, you go to bed at night and you say, thank you, Jesus. And you've had experiences to all of that. But so at that moment, with THI being created, not everybody responded the way you and Andrew did at that time. And because you felt this kind of a blessedness, an obligation, you were willing to go through kind of a crucifixion or catharsis, because when you're putting yourself out there, then everybody questions until you finally get to ITHAKA. And I'm smiling now as THI on this road was so difficult in many ways, and still people question it. But there's no doubt about it that THI has arrived, and the community has arrived with it, and there is a lifting up of all boats. But it's not only the boats, it's the hearts and the minds and the souls of the young. You go to those events, when you see young people, boom, all of a sudden they are proud to be Greek, and they're celebrating it, and they look for reasons. I was talking to a young woman this morning about the Chicago concert with Arios and John Kadunas and
Extraordinary.
That was extraordinary. But then she started talking to me about THI and how proud she is, and she wants to follow the example of her parents. Now, if her parents did not have this passion for it, she would not have it. So they're conveying it. Einstein said the only rational way of educating is by example. And so the kind of examples that are being set now by the THI elder generation is what the young people are going to do. And so it takes you back 2 years ago, if you remember, the Greek tradition. You're sitting in Sparta on the Mount Diatos, and the papu's there, and the son is there, and the grandson is there. And the papu says, let me tell you what I did when I was a young man. And I did this and I did that. And then all of a sudden, you see the middle-aged man, but look at what we're doing now. Then you see the child's, wait till I have my time in the sun. That's what we want our children to do. That's what Hellenism is going to do. That's why it's been, we're 2,500, 3,000 years of a culture and civilization. We shaped Western world. Thomas Jefferson told his nephew, you could not be a fully human being, an American, unless you were Greek. Unless you were Greek. But that is the mystery of Western civilization. It's grounded in us, and the truth of it all in eternity is Jesus. Our Jewish Messiah become the Messiah in the Greek world, and through the Greek world, the rest of the world.
So THI came together, as you often remind me, out of a almost sense of responsibility to not just Greeks in Greece, but to Hellenic ideals which complement Orthodoxy, because even though THI is not a religious organization, a rising tide lifts all boats. When I think about how you have used our Greekness, our Hellenism, our Philhellenism, our Lord Byrons, our Western Europe influence on Greece, as you've often said to me, I almost feel sorry for other denominations. I mean, who else really has that special gift? To the point where you said to me once, maybe we as Greek Americans, because we've got the benefit of Orthodoxy and Hellenism, we almost have a broader responsibility beyond the Greeks and our families, because who else really has that out there? The Irish, sort of, the Italians, this and that. So whether my grandchildren observe the faith in the way that I did, what you've done, Father, is create a new paradigm for that next generation, because faith evolves, responsibility evolves, but it's got a bedrock foundation, as you say, around love and commitment.
And legacy. So it goes back to two things that we bequeath to our children: roots and wings, right? Where did we leave from? We left from home. Our destination is Ithaca, the kingdom, right? We tie the kingdom in Ithaca. That's our purpose. We come back home. We got to give them a reason why. The only way you can come back home and give them a reason why is to explain the essence and the reality of life to them. The examined life is worth living. So the artificial nature of all of this intelligence, you've got to go back to their soul and their heart. We're more than our flesh. We're more than our iPhones. We're more than the iPads. And you got to constantly tell them that. And you got to constantly tell your children you love them. And it's got to be reinforced every day. And it's hard to do it. I have children and grandchildren, and I tell them all the time, one of the simple things, I say to them, we make our decisions make us. We've got to constantly realize, and we got to let our kids make decisions. One of the problems that we have, right, we have our generation. We decided to give everything to our children that our parents did not give us. Where we failed, and are failing, is not giving to our children what our parents did give us. Those underpinnings, the familial underpinnings of philoxenia, philotimia, philotheia, all of those basic fundamentals of life that empowered us to succeed in the marketplace, they gave us. We can't lose it. If you look at Jamie Dimon, if you listen to him, he talks about his Greekness, his Papu, and what happened, and he learned to be economy. The guy Vacris from Costco, where his father said, you know something? He says, Dad, what do I do? He says, find a company that you can work in. Take any job you want, the lowest. Work hard. Really work hard, and you'll succeed. Very simple things. Our parents taught us that. whether it was in the restaurant business or whether the guy was a shoe shiner, whether they became lawyers and stuff like that. How hard did you work? You see, but what we wanted, then we said, well, we got to give our kids something that our parents didn't give us. You got to make sure we give our children what our parents did give us. And I think that makes the difference in their lives, and it will make a difference in your grandchildren's lives.
Speaking for THI, I think it's clear to all of us that what you've helped us understand there and inspire us, I use that word again, is that we've all in the Greek American community, Greek Australian community, come into our own now, where in fact we can be more impactful. We can. This is not 1940, not 1920, not 1890. You know, we have again come into our own, and we can then help forge a return to our culture that has the strength to, in fact, carry on to next generations.
Well, I'm going to say what you did, and Andrew and all those at THI. You felt the bono of Greece, the pain of Greece, where they were making fun of Greece. Orchide, when we stood up against the Axis powers, we're the ones that won the first battle. What, Denmark fell in 3 days, Belgium in 2 days, France in 3 weeks. The Greeks fought 3 months, and we were constantly under Nazi occupation and fascist occupation. But it was the Greeks that had the strength. Everybody in the world was saying how great the Greeks were. Then, because we're so centered about money, all of the great legacy that they received from Greece, all of the thinkings and the economic principles and democratias, all that was forgotten. You guys took it as a personal insult, and you said, we've got to help Greece regain its glory, its prominent position in the world, because that's where it belongs. You felt their pain as a Greek American. And because Greek Americans started standing up over here, and it was felt in the White House, I know you got Bill Clinton involved, Obama was involved, we do Greek Independence Day at the White House, all of that came about because we stood on the shoulders of giants. Who were the giants? The blacksmiths or the guys, shoe shine guys, the restaurateurs that came over here, the guys that built the railroad going west.
Amen.
All of those guys, then they created guys like you. I mean, my God, Gibson Dunn, great law firm. But how many law firms, how many doctors, how many scientists? So this just simply is, we got to say thank you for what we received, or we got to convey that truth, not artificial truth, to our children.
And so your journey continues. You're still on the journey. We're all on it until the end.
That's right.
The legacy that you want to leave, how would you even define it now? What is that legacy for you?
So when I was a young man, I went to a conference, and it was a youth ministry conference. And I always loved mythology, by the way. Mythology's always been.
Well, there you go.
You know,
Hellenism and Orthodoxy,
right.
and
the great myths and the great truths. So I was there, and I've been very blessed. You know, there are people that really needed me. You didn't need me. You loved me, and I love you.
Oh, I need you, Father.
Yeah. But I'm saying you didn't need me. There were other kids that needed my help along the way, as I needed help when I was a young boy. And they were talking, and somebody said, you know, we're in the role of frog kissing. And I said, what do we frog kissing? And of course, it means you kiss a frog, they become a prince or princess. So if along the way that I help people to find themselves fully, to blossom into themselves, Kazantzakis wrote a great quote. I asked my sister, the almond tree, to speak to me of God, and the almond tree blossomed. You have grandchildren now. You're not worried about them making a lot of money. You want them to blossom into the best of themselves, and if they make money, that's great now. but you want them to find meaning and purpose in life and not be lost. Well, so I found my role as a frog kisser. And Kafka talks about either you're a prince or you're a courier, a simple messenger. My responsibility is always to run into people and bring out the best of themselves, that what God created them to be, that's what they should strive for. That's their ITHAKA. And that gives me purpose.
So this interview today, which I'm so blessed to do and humbled to do, I know I speak for the whole board of THI and really the millions around the world who know you well, Father. Your journey still continues. You're somewhere crossing the Aegean into the Adriatic, and you're maybe approaching Ithaca. But as Sean Connery says so in a deep voice like you, don't be in too much of a hurry, Father, because you're still there, and we need you, and we love you, and we thank you for the journey you've helped us understand. Thank you for today, Father.
Well, without you and others, you became a great mirror into my own soul and allowed me to become Father Alex. Without you, without our other friends, and without other people that I've been able to bless and serve with, there would be no Father Alex. So thank you very much. Love you.
Love you too, Father.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.